Let's talk today about everybody's favorite topic, taxes, right? Taxes are your favorite topic? I don't think so. But there's some important tax changes that are going to be implemented starting in 2026 that could be really good for you if you donate to charity, or slightly bad for you, depending on your tax situation. First, before I get started, my name is Lori Styron. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of Charity Watch. I am an accountant, but I am not your accountant. So if you are going to make some decisions about your taxes based on some of this information, this is just a general purpose video. Of course, consult with your own accountant, your own tax advisor, your own legal advisor before acting on this information and filing your taxes. So with that said, there's a couple good things that are happening. So for the first time, if you are one of the in the group of 90% of people who take the standard deduction when you file your taxes versus itemized. Starting in 2026, you are now going to be able to take a deduction on that contribution. For single filers, it's up to $1,000 in charitable contributions, and for people who file jointly, it's up to $2,000. Very important caveat, especially for standard deduction takers who might not be as accustomed to knowing all the tax rules. There's a big difference between a tax deduction and a tax credit. The tax credit is if you owe the government $5,000 and you take a $1,000 credit, now you only owe them $4,000. That's not what this is. This is a tax deduction. This is if your adjusted gross income is $50,000, you donate $1,000 to charity. Now your adjusted gross income is $49,000, and that's what you pay taxes on. So this is a deduction, not a credit. So not as great as it could be, right? But it's still important because you can take a tax deduction now. A lot of people donate to charity and they're not wealthy and they don't itemize and have lots of things to itemize. So now you at least get a little bit of money back if you make those deductions starting in 2026. There is one really important caveat, and I have other videos about this, so I won't go into too much detail, but this deduction, it can't be contributions that you make into donor advised funds, also known as DAFs. So there's some popular donor advised funds that the general public uses, such as the PayPal Giving Fund or the GoFundMe Giving Fund, which just launched this month in July 2025. Those are DAFs. There's 1,400 other DAF sponsors in the US, so there's a lot of them. But if you donate through a donor advised fund, be aware that if you had, thought that donating through one of these funds that you'd still get to take advantage of this tax deduction as someone who takes the standard deduction. You can't. Those donations are not allowed. As of the date I'm making this video, I don't anticipate that will change, but of course, closer to tax time, you can double check. So that's it for standard deduction takers for the most part. There's some new constraints for people who itemize, which currently is only about 10% of filers. There's a new floor. So if you are a wealthy donor and you itemize on your taxes, you make a contribution of $100,000 to a charity. That first $500, or 1/2 of 1%, is only the amount that exceeds that $500 is deductible, right? So it's 1/2 of 1% is the floor. Not a huge amount of money. So hopefully that floor doesn't disincentivize too many individual donors from donating. The bigger impact is on the ceiling. There's a new ceiling for how much you can itemize on your taxes. And this gets more complicated because it's not just about your charitable deductions, it's about all of your itemization. Sorry for the noise back there. So it's it reduces the amount of itemized deductions otherwise allowable by 2/37. This gets very complicated, guys. So, if you're someone who's in a position to make really big contributions, you probably have an accountant or tax advisor or attorney who can help you understand these rules a little better. But in any case, yeah, there's a new ceiling on the total amount that you can itemize, and that would include your charitable contributions. Just a couple other minor things that don't affect most people because this is one for corporations. So there's a new floor for corporate donors. So the first 1% of what corporate donors give starting in 2026 is no longer deductible. Um, this is intended to incentivize corporations to make more meaningful donations, right? Because a corporation in the past may have been able to make like a very small donation and then kind of advertise it, do a lot of PR surrounding this small donation, maybe not say how much they donated, but just that they did donate. And then the value of the PR they're getting way exceeds the amount of charitable donation that they actually gave. So this floor, it's only 1%, but it is kind of intended to encourage corporations, like, make some more meaningful levels of donations when you give. Um, so for corporations, only contributions exceeding 1% are eligible for tax relief. Previously, they could deduct up to 10% of taxable income with no floor. So in conclusion, there's some good things in here that will incentivize more people to give. There are some ceilings and floors on wealthier donors, on corporations that could potentially disincentivize giving. It just really remains to be seen. At the end of the day, hopefully, if you're someone who donates to charity, you're not just doing it for the tax incentives, right? You're doing it because you want to make the world a better place. You want to help fund something that you're passionate about, to help solve some kind of problem in the world, to help alleviate suffering. So, dig deep. Don't just think of this as a tax decision. Think of this as a philosophical decision, um, a decision in terms of like being a good citizen of the world, or perhaps if you're a religious person, a spiritual decision, right? There's a lot of driving forces behind why we choose to donate to charity. Tax relief is just one of those variables. So, don't let these tax changes create too much hesitancy for you. If you are in a position to be able to donate to something that's really important, that aligns with your values, you know, the tax incentives are hopefully just gravy, and the real driving force behind it is that you want to make the world better. So that's all for me for now. Again, my name is Lori Styron. I'm with Charity Watch. Come to charitywatch.org for an article that we have published on this topic, that might be a little easier to follow than this video, and for a lot of other good information and charity ratings. Thanks everyone, and happy giving.